Okay. Sometimes you just need to leap into something, and I've picked up the microphone that usually would be on the desk on the table. I think this is the setup I'm going to use for the cool casual wrestling fan stuff. I need to plug that gap of foam. But I just want to talk about the AEW. Oh my God. Okay, so I'm going to do this stuff in the order of what blew me away the most. And the Hangman Mox stuff, good Lord. I talked about this on episode 0 of the Title Banter podcast over on my Patreon, the Casual Wrestling Fan Patreon stuff, which you can, please go check out the Patreon, see what you think of that stuff. There's some gaming stuff over there as well. But I love Hangman's progression. I need to talk about the Hangman stuff. The whole thing with him, Hangman's like my favorite wrestler in AEW. It's him, it's Kingston. I'm kind of starting to love Speedball, Mike Bailey. But in regards to Hangman, I love the fact that he can get so stuck into really good, worthwhile thematics. You really had this whole redemptive arc to him, and him giving into the worst possible side of him, the rage, the fire, all that kind of stuff. Literal fire as well, burning down Swerve's house. I did absolutely love as well, and I've not seen this with any other wrestlers, but I love the whole thing with Hangman's attire, where over the last sort of year or so, when he was like done dirty by Swerve, dude broke into his house and like threatened his family, whatever else. When Hangman lost it and he was punching the referee and everything else, his pants, his attire, they were all flamey. They became way more over the top. And then over the last few months, as things have dissipated a little bit, they became more smoky. If you go back and watch the shows from the last few months, the fire became smoke. There was a little few embers at the bottom. And then when he came out at All In, it was a different attire entirely. And obviously, the cameraman did that thing where they went to look at the heel tunnel and then went across to the face tunnel because that's where he's coming out from. But all that stuff, a level of wrestling storytelling that is just in the dude's legs, if you want to go back and look at the attire over time. I just thought that was really, really cool and awesome. But the match itself, oh God, I want to touch on Mox stuff. I do apologize if there's a bit of a squeak going on. I've just grabbed the microphone. I want to talk. But like the whole thing with Mox, the Death Riders angle, the Death Riders story, again, talked about this a little bit on episode 0 of the podcast, but the way that this stuff rolled out, I didn't get it and thought it was crap for a good few months or whatever it was. I forget exactly when it was, but Mox and the Death Riders did that interview with Renee Paquette. They did the thing that was only on the AEW YouTube channel where they explained the whole deal with putting the belt in the suitcase or the briefcase. And, Mox being like, why do you need to see a belt? I'm the champ. I am the championship. I represent the champion. I am, you shouldn't need anything else. You shouldn't need to chase gold. You shouldn't need to chase, anything that is material. You just need to beat me. I am the embodiment of the absolute top level at AEW. And for me, I love like I said, like thematics, character writing, trying to break down motivations, getting lost in film theory, media theory, whatever it is. And so for me, I was like, okay, I'm going to give you the biggest benefit of the doubt that I can possibly give you. And I'm going to assume that this is why the Death Riders music sucks. This is why the presentation is so boring. This is why a lot of the promos are kind of just the same thing over and over and over again. Because Mox is saying you shouldn't care about that stuff. I shouldn't need big, glitzy, over-the-top intro music, entrance music, or a glitzy presentation if you actually care about the wrestling and if you actually care about quality and nailing all the things that should represent AEW, in his eyes. And now that we've seen the whole thing play out, and obviously there's a lot of conversation on, this was the plan all along. Maybe it was. I do think it's worked. And I was never, I didn't have an outlet to be able to say like, hey, the Death Riders is potentially genius. But I do look at that and go like, okay, I like it. I like the whole, the crappy entrance music. I get it. Like I see what you were going for the whole time. And that's cool. And obviously it did feel incredible when Hangman finally got the belt out of the case. But the match itself, everything with Mox, like Mox can be a phenomenal final boss. Obviously, the final boss term is so associated with The Rock right now in terms of wrestling, but Mox is the real final boss. Dude is absolutely just ruthless. And sometimes with him, I can find it a bit cringe, all the nail stuff that he does. I just find it to be a bit like, who in an actual, bar fight is using their nails? I've never seen that. For as many different fights that I've seen in random cities that I've been in late at night, I've never seen someone just go, oh, with the nails on the back. So sometimes I think Mox can be a little bit cringe, and that weird walk thing that he does, where it's just sort of, what's that? What are you doing there, pal? But for the most part, It works, and it massively worked against Hangman. Like, Mox is in the shape of his life. Hangman's obviously been getting in better shape as well in the run into becoming the next champ. And they just had a showdown for the ages. I love the stupidity of the fork spot. I love that it annoys people. I've grown up with, like, I remember studying, was it Mary Whitehouse? Back in when we were doing film studies in high school about all the video nasties in the film era, like all the Hammer horror films and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure it was Mary Whitehouse who led like a whole campaign against, like, you think of the children and the blood and everything else. And then obviously in gaming you had all the stuff with Jack Thompson and trying to ban all the different games, like Grand Theft Auto, it's poisoning the youth, and Fox News being like, oh, Mass Effect is a sex simulator and all that kind of stuff. There's always something. There's always some, oh dear God, it's just a bit too much for me. Grab the pearls, etc. And there's a part of me that always just laughs at that stuff. I always have. And but whether it's not to say that we didn't see a man get stabbed in the head, because I remember watching that with my wife, and we were watching that bit where Hangman's just going to Mox's head with a fork. And that is very much just a dude getting stabbed in the head. Just all the blood comes out and everything. I thought it was funny seeing some people on social media be like, "Oh, it's a paint pen. It's not real. That's just, they just dab it and then the blood. Is that why it keeps spurting? Then is it?" But yeah, I thought that was a great thing, and I absolutely loved the pace of the match was spot on. Obviously, those two guys know each other extremely well. Don't know how much was planned backstage beforehand. Don't know how much they called in the ring. That'll be one of the things that I just don't know as a casual wrestling fan. I can't fully tell. I just can't tell what's what in that regard. But the whole thing absolutely worked as just the culmination of like a year's worth of slowing everything right down, making sure that the right person rises to the top and the right person has the right level of grit and the right reason to harness that grit, to be able to finally take down Mox, and doing it with the choke out, with the now signature Hangman hanging was a great way for it to go. I loved all the stuff. Oh my God, the stuff with Danielson coming back as well. I've got a bruise on this one. But the stuff with Danielson coming back in the Blue Panther mask, I just hoped we would see him again, and I loved the way that was handled. Danielson was one of my absolute favorites, and still is whenever he pops up, but obviously dude's not active anymore. And Darby coming back as well, just running down Everest to then sort of drop in. Is awesome. Dude cutting a promo at the top of Everest. It might be one of the coolest, most insane things that happens in recent human history. That's really, really cool. But yeah, I just wanted to freak out about this match. It was so cool. There were so many awesome spots. It was a perfect culmination, of a perfect finale, if we class it as like a season of TV. It was just the perfect way for all these different strands of this story, as weirdly as they've been handled, to fully come together. And Swerve being the dude to hand Hangman the chain as well. I actually didn't see Collision until after All In. So for me, I thought that actually worked better, where we didn't know what Swerve was going to do and where exactly they were, where exactly their allegiances were lying. And then Swerve coming down being like, there you go, you get the belt. Like, I finally accepted it. And obviously then I saw the bit on Collision where it's like, oh, they kind of spelled out that was going to happen. But I loved it in the moment in All In. I thought that was extremely well handled. Other stuff that just springs to mind, obviously Okada, Omega. I'm not gonna lie, I was a bit disappointed by this match. I get the whole defense that they're not who they were, they're not as athletic as they once were. Their last match was like 7 years ago, and it was in New Japan. It's a whole different environment. It's a whole different. They both have completely different bodies, etc. But for me, just don't do it then. Just if you're not going to be able to do it to a degree that's going to let it hang with those other matches, then I'm not that bothered. It felt like a bit of an arbitrary thing to do anyway. It's like, well, we've got Okada, we've got Omega, we have to do Okada Omega again, and then the match itself was just a bit slow. Like, I mean, it finally got to a point. Because the thing is, I love Omega, and I've only watched him for the last few years, and I've gone in and watched different things from New Japan and tried to catch up on his best matches. But the whole thing is that I do trust Omega. I trust him to, obviously, he's a veteran, he's got an incredible mind for wrestling, and I trust this to all be intentional, kind of like the Death Rider stuff. But at some point, they're kind of selling us like another match down the line or a trilogy or something, and it didn't really feel like this one hit the pocket in the first place. It did leave me wanting more, and I think I feel like I read something that it was intentionally a little bit flat to sort of elevate the other matches, but I don't know. Still, I thought that it just got in the pocket of these two sort of like weathered warrior veterans finally being able to contend with each other now that they're able to go, at each other. And that was cool, but just when it got in that pocket, it ended. And it felt like such an abrupt ending. I actually sat like that for ages. I didn't breathe for like 30 seconds being like, oh, Okay. Like, when that happens in wrestling and you just sort of sit there like, okay, I guess that's the reality we're in now, that match ended that way. That's what that felt like. And so I also kind of felt like it was mostly a squash. Like, it felt like Okada just dominated Omega, and Omega's still selling. Do you know he's got diverticulitis? Do you know? Yes, I know. You've done this for months. Oh my God. Um, I get that, like, selling is a thing, but we've sold you coughed up a blood capsule. I get it. Just, can you do something else other than every single move that has anything to do with his stomach is like, oh, he's down again. It reminded me of when MJF oversold his leg against Jay White, like last year or the year before, whatever it was. I get sick of that after a while, because I'm just like, every single, oh, he's down and out again, right? He's got to get back up again. Oh my God. Like, and that can fundamentally build to that pocket that a match can get into, and it can then be great, but they didn't extend it enough. My overall thoughts were just that I was a bit like, okay, I kind of found it to be one of the most forgettable matches of the night, like right alongside the Ops match. And I love Samoa Joe, love all those people, but I thought the Ops match was a little bit flat as well. Same as the Hurt Syndicate match. I thought it was interesting that Jet Speed were able to jump the Hurt Syndicate on Dynamite. Like, that was the lead into the pay-per-view. They finally let another team get the drop on them and absolutely wipe them out, which, as far as I can remember, hasn't happened yet. But then that didn't carry over. Like, the match itself was cool. Like I said, I love Speedball, and Kevin Knight is awesome as well. But it didn't feel like there was never a chance they were going to get it. The biggest takeaway from that match is Nick Wayne's portrayal of Christian Cage, which is awesome. Like, it feels like it's a long time coming. Now we're finally going to do all the Edge stuff, Cope stuff. Sorry, I can never remember to call him Cope. But we're doing all that stuff. It felt like that was the takeaway rather than the match itself. And then the other big one, obviously, was Toni Storm versus Mercedes Moné. I barely know Moné's work. And to be fair, Storm, I've only seen Toni Storm in AEW. Apart from a couple of matches when she first debuted in AEW, and then people were sharing some stuff from her WWE run. And a little bit with Moné. I went back and watched her match with Willow, the one that obviously went horribly wrong for her. But overall, I've not been on the hype train with Moné. Like, when she debuted, I was like, cool, let me see what you can do. And then she didn't wrestle for ages. And it felt like the crowd turned on her. And I kind of just joined them. I was like, yeah, like, whatever. Like, I've not been blown away by a Moné match. This one was a hell of a lot better. The pace was a hell of a lot stronger. Moné does have such a cool, like, mind for offense. Like, I feel like it's like the Anthony Bones stuff, where, like, it feels like the moves that I've not seen. So I'm just like, oh, that's a great way for you to do whatever the hell that move's called. That's awesome. That feels like an innovative approach to, in a division that, or in a general wrestling company that I've not seen as much of. And so I want to love Moné. I want to think that she's this, like, absolute badass that can pick someone apart, whether it's technically or, with strikes or whatever it is. And she can do a bit of the aerial game as well. But I'm yet to be blown away by her. I was so glad that Storm won. Like, I'm not believing the bits and pieces that you see online about, like, oh, Moné has just bought her way to the top. I have no idea. I don't even know how the hell that would work. How many people would have to agree on that backstage to be like, yeah, we're just going to screw over the rest of the company. And then every other company that she's got a belt in, it's like, yeah, no worries about all of our respective locker rooms. That feels a bit impossible, to be honest. But still, I like her not winning the big one. I think that's better for her character. And it means that she has to kind of go inward and self-analyze and go, how was I not able to get the Women's World Championship when I do have all these other things? I like the way that shook out. And then Toni Storm is absolutely phenomenal. I'm massively a Jamie Hayter fan, and I want Hayter to get the spotlight again. I think she's injured right now, but I love Hayter. I love Stat. I love Athena. Oh my God. And so the right people won in regards to those matches. But to pivot over into the women's gauntlet and the two gauntlet matches. One, I love this thing. I love this Casino Gauntlet mini Royal Rumble thing they've got going on. I love that the winner gets a contract that they can cash in whenever. I just love that. It's a dumb wrestling rule, but it's awesome. Like, for the whole night, because MJF won the dudes one, I thought that he was going to run in when, Hangman was all bloodied and battered, or Mox had just lost or whatever, and MJF was going to cash in. So, like, I like that excitement of what's going to happen. I think that's a really fun thing. On the women's side, Athena won, but the women's Casino Gauntlet was awesome as well. I really love how far the women's division has come. Like, in the wake of Britt Baker sort of stepping away from AEW, there are those conversations on, well, the division doesn't need Britt Baker anymore. Like, she was the sort of one person that was, like, leading the women's division across sort of 2021, 2022. Obviously, that wasn't entirely true, but it felt like she got a lot of the spotlight. She was doing a mic spot, like, nearly every week. And that was cool, but it feels like obviously Baker's dropped off. There was that whole thing with her and Serena Deeb where she kind of buried her, like, on TV, and then she hasn't been able to come back. It's a whole thing. From what I've seen anyway. But I love how just vibrant the women's division is. Like, I love that each individual woman has this great sense of like dress and these signature elements, the iconography. Like, I love this whole showdown between Julia Hart and Tekla, where they're both sort of doing the upside down, hanging off the turnbuckles, looking at each other, like both being like, we're both doing spooky stuff. That's really fun. Love Willow. I love when she teams up with Powerhouse Hobbs and they're both doing the big black and jack stuff. Like just team them up. Do a mixed tag division and get Willow and Hobbs together. I don't care how you do it. It just feels like they're made for each other in that regard. And Willow doing the massive spine buster and everything is awesome. So yeah, I had an absolute blast with both those matches. I think that I just loved that, watching the pay-per-view being like, we're getting 2 mini Royal Rumbles in this thing. And I love the rules as well, being that people will just keep coming down to the ring until there's a pinfall. I think that's really, really fun. There were a couple of bits in the dudes one where, it was like, obviously you're trying to get excuses for people to face off in the middle of the ring, but it means that on the wide camera angles, there are a lot of dudes just waiting to come in around the outside. And obviously it's just a reality of wrestling, but at the same time, the women's one felt like it was a bit better paced than the guys. And the women's one had a lot more like over the top, everybody's involved spots. Like everybody being knocked down all at once or whatever it was. But still, I had an absolute blast with that. And speaking of having an absolute blast, I think my second match of the night after Hangman Mox was the Swerve and Ospreay against the Bucks. Just exemplary wrestling. Like, I love, and I'll get into this in various ways going forward on the channel, but I love that mix of choreography and rehearsal, athleticism and wrestling. It's all just combined for me. I just watch it. I'm just amazed by it. I get the criticism when some people look at certain bits that feel too choreographed, where you can tell someone's waiting for the next bit. Like, there was one clip from this match that started doing the rounds online of like, oh, this isn't wrestling, this is just gymnastics. And it's like, well, it's all kind of one and the same. But it was still an incredible sequence. There was a whole thing where they were all just trading moves, doing finishes, getting back up, keeping going. I love that stuff. In terms of the overly choreographed stuff, the only time that I didn't really like it was when Ospreay, was it Ospreay against Ray Phoenix a little while ago? And they were sort of running back this sequence that they'd done years ago. I think it was Ospreay and Phoenix. It might have been Ricochet and Phoenix, whatever. But when that happened, that was like, okay, this old match that we've done years ago is known for this particular sequence. Let's like do that again. And it just felt like they were waiting for each other to come forward. So for me with this stuff, it's always just a mark of how tight can you get it? Can you still do the acrobatics and do the gymnastics and do the over the top stuff, but tighten it up so it does feel like someone's trying to get a hit in and they dodge it and then do something else. Like, it's the ambition, it's the try. And then what is the execution? Like, I don't rule it out entirely. It's just like, if you're going to try and do one of those sequences, then you have to try and nail it. And in case of the Bucks and Ospreay and Swerve, to me, they massively did. I just thought that match was absolute fire. It was just so tight. You have 4 of the absolute best wrestlers on the planet just going all out against each other. And it was an absolute blast. So yeah, man, I like recording this in the immediate aftermath of All In. Could not get enough of that thing. The length of the show, I'll take more. Give me a 10-hour, I don't care. Like, you're giving me more bang for my buck. Like, if a match doesn't work for me, no worries. Like, I do not care. I'm not watching this stuff live, which probably helps. I'm watching the morning after. And I can just jump through if something gets really boring. But I didn't jump through any of this stuff. I thought it was cool. But still, I love Tony Khan being like, I have this insane roster. I have this awesome venue. There's so much excitement around AEW right now. And I'm just going to put as many awesome matches on as possible. And then it's over to the wrestlers themselves to deliver. But the opportunity is right there. And I felt like All In was just such a... I mean, AEW don't miss on pay-per-views. I feel like they missed, was it Double or Nothing 2022 or something when everyone was injured? I thought that was a bit naff. But 99% of the time, AEW pay-per-views are the absolute pinnacle. And that was the case even last year when they were going through such a bad stint in terms of the week-to-week. But All In was everything that AEW does better than everybody else. And I feel like we've seen so many different people like tweeting that either across the show or in the immediate aftermath of it, going like, I've never seen anything like this. This is absolutely incredible. So yeah, man, I absolutely loved it, and I can't wait to see what's next.